Get strong.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's slightly late Soul Man surgery. We've had some technical issues this morning. Susan and I have been laughing behind the scenes about. So welcome to Monday's Soul Man surgery, where we have got my very lovely friend Susan Watson from Perfect Solutions Coaching, and she is going to be taking you guys through today how to develop a positive mindset. This is a two-part series, so we've got Susan today and we've got Susan on Friday, as we've always got her, but we're going to be speaking on both of these days about developing a positive mindset because it's such a vast subject. So, enjoy the show, guys! Good morning, Charlie. How are you?
Hello, Stephen. Can you hear me okay? Yes.
Yeah, can hear you totally fine.
Good.
So if you guys are watching this morning as well, you know, you'll have a little update that will jump up in the bottom of your screen there saying the Soul Man and Friends is live. So please do click that so that you get notified whenever we go live in our Soul Man surgeries so you don't miss anything. And also, when Susan's speaking, share the love. Press that big fat love heart button at the very bottom of the page because it's nice to see Susan, isn't it? When we see the wee love hearts popping up, isn't it? So
it is. It's just nice to know people's there. That's what I would say.
So guys, we are going to get started speaking this morning about how to develop a positive mindset. So good morning, guys, and Susan, good morning to you, my darling. So,
good morning, everyone. Right, so over to me. Let's have a look here. I want to pre-warn people. There's a lot of me talking about the foundations of this before we get into little exercises, but it's important because it's giving you some knowledge and information to help you progress when you start little methods that you can use yourself. So today is all about the development of a positive mindset. I'm going to share some understanding and some tips and methods that you can use at home, and that's what this is all about. It's things that you can use yourself. But I would like to say that if you believe that the thought patterns and habits that you have are related to anything like anxiety, depression, loss, or trauma, you might need another little helping hand over and above the sessions, the methods that I'm going to show you. So please feel free to message me privately if you'd like to discuss that further, because there's other things that can help with that. And I think that's really important. And I'm always happy to get private messages. But as Stephen mentioned, it's a massive subject, and I'll share as much as I can. Please join in with any questions at any time you want. And I can't see anyone who's here. So please feel free just to say hello, just so that we know who's here. So, first important point to share is that we're looking today at your thinking brain. So it's to cognitively think. That's a part of positive thinking that we're looking at. And it might sound like a strange thing to say. So if you're going to make changes to your thinking brain, you need your brain to be online and you need it to be working. And I'm saying that because if you're someone who is stressed, anxious, panicky, all these sort of things, your thinking brain switches off, it comes offline. That's why you talk about brain fog. It's very difficult to learn. So we need to bring your brain back online before you can make any changes cognitively with your thinking brain. We've got previous sessions with Stephen that you can look at that we go into this quite detail. But just to start off, because it's an important practice to get into, I'm going to just get everybody to do a wet noodle. And Stephen's going to demonstrate the wet noodle, although he didn't know that.
Hi, thanks, Susan. Okay, go for it.
I want you to demonstrate that to switch off your toxic stress we're talking about here, stress that switches the brain on, you have to fully and completely have a relaxed muscle body. Every muscle in your body must relax. That's why it's called the wet noodle. There you go. And when you fully relax every muscle in your body, it dials down your stress levels, takes you back to a healthy stress level. But what it also does, after 8 to 10 seconds, your thinking brain clears. So it's easy to think clearly. And that's when we can start our decision making and learning. So it's really good for you. Really good. Well done, Stephen. You can sit up now. Don't go to sleep. And can you just, do you remember the breathing with the hands behind the head? Can you just show that as well? And just push your elbows back and just breathe. Because that has a really calming effect and brings your mind back online as well. It's really important, because if your mind's not working right, you're never going to make positive mindset changes. So that's good. You just do that for 8 to 10 seconds. Always do that before you start your exercises. And that'll bring your thinking brain online. So good stuff. Thank you, Stephen. He wasn't expecting that.
It was actually good. I love doing it anyway. It's like stretching and flopping and kind of beat it.
And do that at home. Try it as we go along, and you'll start to feel different. Because things like exhaustion, stress, hunger, not getting a good sleep, all that affects our moods. So your mood is a big, huge part of your well-being. But remember, negative thoughts also impact your well-being and your mood and your sleep. So it's all like a big circle that's all connected. Another reason for that is cortisol. Now, cortisol is a brain chemical. And your brain loves cortisol. But it's that chemical that makes us anxious, nervous, we have perceived threats, we start to worry, all this. So we're actually controlling that and turning off that cortisol by doing that wet noodle as well. So that's why it's really important. The key here that I'm mentioning again, so I'm really wanting to stress it, is self-regulation and stress relief is #1 importance while you're working on changing your mindset. Absolutely. Living in a negative sort of mindset is absolutely not much joy. It's exhausting and tiring and wears you down. And you know what? Not just for you, it has the same effect on people around you. If you've got people around you and you're very negative, or if you're around negative-minded people, it's actually really wearing. It is, and it just tires you out. So seeking happiness, more joy in your life, peace of mind, I have to tell you now, nothing on the outside will ever change that. It's an inside job. It's yours, in your body and in your mind. No one has the answers for you. You've got to change this. And I'm not going to lie to you, it takes a lot of effort. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something you've got to work at. And actually, do you know what? I think it's a lifetime working to maintain a really positive output, because we'll all face challenges and difficulties. It's whether or not you're going to let them change the way you see the world.
Kind of goes back to that seeking happiness thing we were speaking about last week. Sorry to interrupt you there, but people were trying to seek happiness so much, and the truth is, you're always working on it, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's important, just because you're bringing that up, is that nobody ever lives in a constant state of happiness. We might think that's what we're striving for, but that's not what life is. What we're looking for is to have a balanced life with peaks of happiness. And that's how we get appreciation for what we have. So don't anyone aim for thinking as a life that is constantly happy, because that's it's a fairy tale. That's not true at all. Think of your mind like a computer. If you think that over the years, your mind gets programmed to a way of thinking, and the longer that you have like negative thoughts, negative behaviors, you might have been brought up in a household where there's negative thinking, the deeper that encoding gets in your mind. So what you're actually doing is rewriting the code. You're actually reprogramming your mind, and that takes time and effort. So you've got to be patient, be kind to yourself, but actually put in the work. I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
As nothing comes, just falls in your lap. If you want change, you've got to work for it. But I want to talk for a wee bit now about the mind has 3 states. And when I'm reading it out, have a wee think about it and see if you can recognise where your favourite mind state is to go. Because we have the reasonable mind, the emotional mind, and the wise mind. And every single person possesses these 3 states. But what we've got is we tend to go to our favourite. We've got a preferred mindset that we actually go to, even though we've all got the 3 of them. So the emotional state is when feelings control a person's thoughts and behaviours. So they might act really impulsively with little regard to what the consequences are. They're not even thinking of what happens. They're just thinking of what they're feeling in the moment. And that's called an emotional response. So the best thing to do is just let that pass. And I can give you a really good example of this when I reacted to an emotional response. I was training to be a hypnotherapist quite a few years ago. And there's probably about 14 people getting trained in hypnotherapy. And I was one of them. And it was day 2. And the trainer stood up and said, "Susan Watson, you're now taking this class." And I was like, "No, I'm not doing that." And I'm talking about fear, emotion, everything, right? And he said, "Oh, yes, you are." And he walked out the room and just left me standing there with all these people staring at me. And it was after a minute, because in my mind I was thinking, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" But in that moment, I suddenly realised that I had no choice because I was left. And it was like the emotions were pushed aside, and I stood up and I actually, for 10 minutes, just took the class. And the fear and the panic and all that emotion just passed. So that's a prime example of your emotion rushing and causing you to behave in a certain way. And that's something that I remember for me, because when I get that rush of emotion, I always remember now just to sit and wait for a minute and it'll go past. So that's a wee hint for you. The wise mind refers to a balance between your emotional and reasonable mind. So what you're doing there is you're considering, this is what I've just said, the wise mind. You're considering your emotion and considering the thoughts, and then you make a decision on how you're going to act. So that's your rational, clever mind. The other one, the reasonable mind, is when you're dealing with facts and figures, but you're not really considering emotions. And that's not really a good place to be either, because although you're thinking about facts, you're not thinking of your feelings, you're not thinking of your emotions, but more importantly, you're not thinking of other people's feelings or emotions. So you're not giving consideration to that. So the ideal place is to be in that wise mind where, yes, you consider feelings and emotions, but also you're using the facts and thinking about it. So just think about that for a moment. Do you actually recognise yourself ever stepping into any of these different mindsets? Do you recognise where your favourite one is to go to? Because what was your one, Stephen?
Mine is probably the emotional. I think there's a bit of conflict though, because like everything that I do, it always is driven by my emotion. But I do have that wise, reasonable mind as well that kicks in and says, it kind of sense checks it.
Yeah. To be fair, I think the emotional response is the strongest response that you can have anyway. So I think the majority of people would initially have that big splash of the emotional response. It's whether or not you can step back from that. And it's a stepping back from that into your wise mind, which is the important thing, without a doubt. I think I spent about 40 years of my life running about in an emotional state because I just went with how I felt. I didn't know any better. And I never thought consider consequences. That's not a good way to be.
That's our lovely June Dixon saying, absolutely emotional, but getting there in my journey to wise.
Well done, June. Well done. Because it takes effort, so well done. So developing a healthy thinking mindset is really key to having a strong wellness, a good healthy life, because you can actually make yourself unhealthy and unwell by the way your thoughts are. So that's really important. People have problems with ruminating. What that is having thoughts that go over and over and over and over again in your mind. You might dwell on your own shortcomings, mistakes you've made. What if I had done that? If only that had happened. Why did I say that? And people just get stuck in it. And it's like an old recording going on and on and on in your head. That is not a good way of thinking. And to me, that is a real swamp, if you like, of negative thinking. And you get stuck in that. So if this is the case, I want you to start thinking about things with me now. What if you changed your view on the thoughts and considered different options and suggestions? What if you started looking for lessons instead and identifying new possibilities? Now that might sound like, well, that's really obvious, Susan. Some people don't actually see that. They don't see that there's other possibilities. The way that I say, if you think that's going to be too hard, look at it as trying on like a new pair of shoes. You've got to try them on to see if they actually fit. You might say, oh, they won't fit me. I'm never going to try them on. But how do you know? Have a wee bash. Try something different. Because if you have negative thinking, you need to try something different and really challenge yourself. If you don't do this and don't do something different, you've got to remember that nothing will ever change. Nothing's going to change. So it takes effort. So you've got to be able to try things. Now, there's quite a few unhelpful thinking styles. And I'm going to just go through them briefly. And again, just see what you recognise. See if you see yourself in here. There's all or nothing thinking. For example, oh, I'm not perfect. Or if I'm not perfect, I've failed. Or either if I can't do it really well or do it right, then I'm not doing it at all. Or there's people who generalise, like, well, nothing good ever happens to me. Everything that happens to me is always rubbish. Or the mental filter, which is you never actually notice the successes and the things that are really good. You only see the bad things and the failures. Or ignoring the good stuff. And you might say things like, well, that doesn't count. That's not what matters. But in fact, it's good stuff. So you're talking yourself out of that. And then there's the mind readers and the fortune tellers who jump to conclusions, thinking you know what people are thinking about you and what they're saying about you. And you know what the future holds. Catastrophizing, blowing things out of proportion, mountains out of molehills. Then there's emotional reason, we've talked about that, but then it's because we feel a certain way, it must be true. For example, if I think, I was really embarrassed, I must be a right idiot. I'm an idiot because I let myself get embarrassed. That's your emotional reasoning. Or we've got the shoulds and musts. I should have done that, or I must do that. All you end up is feeling either really frustrated or really guilty and angry. Given labels. I am stupid, I am useless, I'm a waste of space. Or perhaps personalising things. This is my fault. You take the blame for everything. Or importantly, perhaps you blame everybody else for everything that's ever went in life. That happens too. So does anybody recognise any of them in themselves? I think I can honestly say I've jumped in and out every single one of them at some point in my life. And probably had my feet in quite a few of them in one go. Because I think most people will.
Yeah, we go through every one of those, don't we?
Yeah. And I think that's important to say that we'll all have experiences of that. But with a positive mindset, I'm not saying you will not jump in them, but it's recognising it and not staying there and being able to pull yourself back out. And I think that's the key, the noticing and the knowing. So sorry.
You know, I'm saying that's huge because, like, a lot of people say to me, Stephen, you're always so happy and you're always so upbeat, and like I go through these things as well. You know, sometimes I'm like, oh, why can it not just be the way I want it to be? But yeah,
I know that's true. I know it's because I speak to you, you're my friends, and I hear you, but you're very good at recognising it and taking yourself back out of it, and that's the point.
Yeah, exactly. So when you recognise it, I think that's it. When you recognise it, you need to think like, what is my options here? How can I change this? Mm-hmm. And I always look at it like that. And again, by great advice from you as well, you know, like you'll say, so what's your options? Where are you going to go with this? And I'm like, right, am I actually? And you can change your thinking.
You absolutely can. You absolutely can. So I'm going to give you a little exercise now. And it's just as well this is recorded because people can go back over this. To challenge the negative process, what you would do is you'd get a pen and paper out. And we're going to do what's called a little reflective writing, right? And it's,
Ready, guys.
it's all about giving thought and consideration to what you're experiencing. So what happens is you can think back to an old event if you want. Something's happened, an event's happened, a situation's happened, an experience that's made you think really negatively. What you do is you write down what happened, and you take a note of what you did and what other people did, what the part other people had in that. And you just think about what thoughts came into your mind when this was going on and what sort of emotions you were feeling. So this is all the recognising what was going on part. And then you look at the consequence of that. And by that, I'm talking about how did you end up feeling? Were you angry, depressed, anxious, frustrated? Or do you know what? Did you just go into that pity pot and start feeling really sorry for yourself? Poor me. And then you consider, did you start behaving in a way that wasn't good for you? A way that you didn't want to feel? Some people may find that they get explosive, or perhaps they thought, you know what, I feel so cheesed off, I'm going to go and get a glass of wine. They started drinking, just feeling miserable, moping about. What was the plaster on the wound, if you like, the way you expressed yourself over all that? And then what you would think about is your belief. What do you believe about that event? And by that, it might be, well, it was all that person's fault, or it was all my fault. But think about your belief and why that situation made you feel, react, and think the way it did. And this is a big bit. I want you to think of an I am statement. How did that situation make you feel? If you were to make it I am. Is it I am stupid, I am strong, I am a failure, I am just whatever it is. I am sad, I am angry. What would you write down in that I am statement? Then this is where you challenge it. What evidence is there that that belief is true? What evidence is there? What facts is there? Not just what you think. What fact is there that that belief is true? And then consider if that belief is helpful or if it's unhelpful. And then what you want to do is effectively write a new belief out for yourself, something that's more helpful. So think about a statement or a new feeling. For example, if that situation ever comes up, I want to feel calm because I know I'm worth feeling calm and I have an opinion that is worth hearing. Whatever, that's just me sharing one with you. But write down one that you think is appropriate to that situation. And that's a little exercise you would continue to do when you find yourself in situations that are coming up that are making you think, feel, or act in a way that you deem as negatively. Because what you want to do is actually challenge it, look at why it's happening, what it's doing to you, and then replace it with something else. Does that make sense?
It's actually quite powerful. I've just done it as you've been speaking to it. And, I think for me, I just wanted to share. Are you happy for me to share, actually?
Share away.
So for me, it was the big thing for me was I'm an arsehole for trusting. That's like that was my statement. But then when I look at it, there's real tangible reasons for that. So it wasn't in my mind. It was real things, factual things that happened. And then I've changed my statement to this gave me a lesson to deal with things as they happen rather than letting things bubble under the surface. And I didn't think it was my fault. I didn't think it was just their fault either, which is interesting because I've always said it was their fault. But actually looking at it, I was just as much to blame because I didn't act on it quickly enough.
There you are. There you are.
It's funny that, when you write it down and you actually get to pull
Yeah.
it apart.
You're taking it out your head, and you're actually deciphering it. We never do that. We just react and feel. But when you're actually doing that, this is when the cognitive, the thinking brain comes in, and you're actually looking at it and you're seeing how perhaps a past event, you're allowing it to move forward and actually interfere with your joy in life going forward. But in fact, it's something that you don't need to take with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you know what I did as well with that, Susan, which is fascinating, and this is something that I do not do with anything. I was telling everybody how much this person had hurt me. I was saying to people, so if I tell you this, promise that you won't share it with anybody else. This is what they've done to me, and this is how they made me feel. And see, when I look back on that, I feel quite ashamed.
Let it go. What I would say to you is, when people have hurt you, right? You have, and I'm going to come back to this later on, you have a choice, right? People do hurt you because the reason you get hurt is because it's not actually that they're hurting you. It's the expectations and dreams and wishes that you had that person was included on are not being fulfilled. So in fact, it's not their action, it's just the fact that you're not able to live the life that, or what you've pictured in your mind, you're not able to achieve what you want. So you've got a choice that you can say, well, okay, this has happened. You're right, it's a lesson. But you always have a choice that you can either take the past with you, that hurt, and all you do is drag it into your future and feel miserable. And I'm going to swear here, I'm sorry, you feel like shit, basically, right? Or you could say, do you know what, that was a horrible time in my life. This didn't work out for me. I do feel really sad about that, and I'm recognising that. Write down that exercise. Do your statement about moving on and letting go. And that's the statement to focus on, not the past. Because all you do is drag it with you. You end up falling into that, what I call the pity pot, feeling sorry for yourself and thinking, look what they've done to me. Poor me. That's right, Stephen. Stop it.
Yeah.
But it's easy. It's easy, very easy to fall into that cycle, but you don't want to. You really don't want to.
I think I've definitely dealt with it. I think it's definitely in my past, but I think on reflection, looking back on it, to see how I reacted to that, I think it's something that I'll never allow to happen again. You know, I wouldn't ever allow myself to get into that circumstance where I feel like I can't speak.
Right, that's the lesson, isn't it? That's the lesson.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to learn and make changes in your life from the lessons that we learn. That is a good thing. So that's not taking the pain with you, that's taking the lesson with you. And that, to me, that's a positive anyway. So it's good. Yeah.
Good.
So I've got another wee exercise. I want you to try imagining that you're free from all cares and worries, smiling inside and out, right? And you just imagine yourself feeling really relaxed and at peace with yourself, like a wee glow inside you. Then what you do is you write down 10 things, if you can, that can make you smile inside and out. And even if you only have one thing today, that's okay. Just write down that one thing. Because just think about that. If you've got one thing, that means that you have something that gives you a glow inside, that makes you smile inside and out. How great is that? And all you can do is keep adding to it and watch that list grow as you actually work through this exercise. And that, to me, I used to call it, is what makes your heart sing. You're looking for something that really lifts your spirits. Because it's important to realise everyone has a choice. And you'll have heard me talk about the choice point before, Stephen. Emotions result in a thought, and that the thought results in a feeling. And it works the other way around, as feelings gives us thoughts, but everything ends up in a behaviour, react in a certain way. Look, come in any order. So what I talk about is give a little point where you can pause, right? And that is whenever that thought or emotion comes up, before you actually react to it, Just take a breath and just imagine doing that wet noodle. And nobody would even know, it only takes a couple of seconds. And then you have a clearer mind because your mind starts to think, and then you can have a reaction to it that way. And you'll find yourself behaving in a more way in line with your own morals and ethics, actually, because you're not just reacting on that emotion. And that's really important. And it also breaks down habitual behaviors, because our brain likes habit. We all have habits. So if you're actually starting to take a pause, relax your body, and then react in a sensible thinking way, what you're doing is you'll find it will be a different way you're behaving and reacting rather than the emotional way. And it starts to actually change the neural pathways in your mind. And they'll fade and get less and less. So you'll find yourself actually behaving and acting in a more positive way. So that's really important. And if anybody wants to do a little, they've got problems with negative thinking. And I've talked before about stop. I used to just say stop. As soon as that wee voice in my head started, Susan, you're an asshole or an idiot or whatever, I used to just put my hands up and just say no. And it was almost just like telling myself, do you know what? There's not a place for this in my life. It was like just putting a wall up, it was. And then I would say something more positive to myself. So instead of the Susan, you can't do that, you're an idiot, I would say something like, do you know what? You're not perfect. You can do anything you want. Just what you're saying. You'll learn a lesson and get better. And actually just doing that, because it's all the coding, your mind's listening to everything, you can absolutely change it. And by doing that, you can change really how you feel. Anything. It just takes effort. You've got to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You got any questions on that, Stephen?
No, see, for me, looking at those 10 things, it's actually quite hard to learn 10 things straight off your head, isn't it?
Even one, you can just add to it as they come up when you think about it. Even putting one on a bit of paper. Because see, people who are stuck in really negative thinking and that catastrophizing and not seeing the good and stuff, they'll actually feel there's nothing good in my life. I can't see anything. So the minute you start putting it down and even got one and you start to add to it and that list grows, we're going back to this part of your brain that actually gives you what you focus on. You're actually bringing your attention and focus to all the good things in life rather than all the littler things actually that are really less important and you shouldn't be wasting your energy on.
It's like the gratitude thing, you know, it's almost like a list of gratitude, isn't it? You know,
but it's linked, this is more than gratitude because it's linked into things that are really meaningful and give you purpose in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Things that light you up and give you true joy. This is for you, not for anybody. This is things that are going to spark you on in your life with joy and meaning. And I would move on to think about how compassionate are you to yourself? How kind are you to yourself? Do you criticise yourself quite a lot? Negative thinkers probably would be quite hard on themselves. Does that then, if you've got that wee internal voice pulling you down and telling you everything's rubbish, I'm going to ask you a question. Does that voice, internal voice, remind you of anyone? Perhaps you have anyone in your past, even when you were a child? Are they saying the kind of words and language that somebody else used to say to you? Perhaps making you feel or think the way somebody else used to influence your feeling and thinking. And when you criticise yourself or others, how does that make you feel? Think about that. Because sometimes we have a good old moan and criticise other people or criticise ourselves, but think about it. How does it actually make you feel? Do you think it makes you feel better? No. And what's the consequences, the impact on your life of listening to that negative, moany wee voice in your head? What does it attract to you? And what does it make you avoid? These are really important questions because this isn't just about how you feel in your thoughts. This is your world. This is what it does to your world and your view of life and how you experience life. You find that you may have adapted behaviours through these processes. And what I mean is we pick up habits and self-talk and ways to do things that really hold us back now and take away our joy for life. But there might have been something in our past that we developed this way of thinking or these behaviours as a way of protecting ourselves.
Funny, isn't it? Because Jamie Max just popped up there. That internal voice reminds me of my dad. I can hear my dad's voice as well.
What you tend to find, I always say it's like somebody's pressed record on an old computer recording. And it's something that gets played in our head over and over again. And that voice tends to be something related to a person or what people have said in our past. It gets stuck in here. They've forgotten all about it, but it's getting played over and over and over again. And do you know what? We start to believe it, and we start to live our life thinking that's a truth. A lot of utter tripe. It's all lies that are playing in our head, and that's what we need to realise. It's something that somebody said or made us feel. Could have even been a throwaway conversation, a throwaway comment that they've said, but somewhere in our head it's stuck in that coding, and we've learned to believe it's true. No, it's not.
Do you know, it's and maybe I'm oversharing here, Susan, but you know, like my sister and I, we grew up with like really loving mum. You know, our mum always like covered us and surrounded us in love, and our grandparents were the same. And my dad had a really terrible childhood, so my dad couldn't quite connect with us emotionally. And my dad was always so hard on me and my sister. You know, he was so strict and so hard on us. So much so that when my dad came home, we'd be like, "Oh God, Dad's home," you know. And it's, I think it's really hard to pull yourself away from that.
What I would say is the exercises I give me here are things that people can do at home. And there are things that will help with that little internal voice and changing your view on it. Because once you understand it, you can actually start to make changes. But if people feel that the internal messages are really pulling them down, and I'm not just saying this to get people come to me, sometimes people need just that wee bit of help, because there might be a wee bit of trauma linked there, and in which case they need a wee helping hand to clear some trauma so they can move on to a more positive life. I mean, I'm not asking people to share anything like that on here. If anybody wants to ask me anything about that, they can just message me. Because you know what? If you lived, it's just, I'm not talking about you, Stephen, but if somebody's lived in as a child growing up in a situation or environment they found traumatic with fear, and they've got all that going through their head, they'll probably need a wee bit more of a helping hand than writing a few notes on a bit of paper. That's all I'm saying. Sometimes you just need that wee bit extra.
Yeah, I know I'm going down a leafy lane with this, honestly, but I think that there's many people, you know, we were speaking about this yesterday as well, you know, how when you're really young and the messages that you get as a small child, you know, I think they have a profound effect on our adult life, don't they?
Mm-hmm. If you think a child in a playground, 6 years old, going to school, and they're sort of pushed out, they're not one of the in crowds sort of thing. They're standing in the playground with they're packed lunch and they've got any friends. The message they're getting there is that they don't fit in, that there's something wrong with them, that they're different. And if that gets into their head, even though there's been no physical or emotional like bullying as such, but that is emotional bullying, that child could potentially grow up all their life thinking that they'll never fit in and nobody will ever like them because they just didn't fit in the world.
Yeah.
Small things, what seems small things, can be absolutely enormous to other people.
We've got my sister there, and I want to share this just because we've been talking about it, right? She sees our dad in a different way now, and she has good emotional chats, and he's a cuddly bear, really. Honestly, like, I see my dad like that now as well. I see him as a very different man now that he's older. Mm-hmm. But, like, see, when we were little, he was just a shite.
I would take that back to what I was like as a mother, right? I told you my kids used to call me the morning monster. I was a single parent. All I did was shout and scream all the time. And I'm not denying that at all. Shout, scream, ruled with an iron fist, right? And as you get older, you change, you learn. You actually, do you know what? I'm in a better place as a human being now, so I would manage my life better. I was probably stressed out my box all the time now. I'm sure my kids, well, I hope my kids see me differently now.
Yeah.
Because I guess that's just Do you know what? We all make mistakes, eh? We all do.
It's so hard to get past the I suppose the trauma of it as well. You know, like I don't know if I would even call it trauma. I'll never forget. I remember I ran to my mum and dad, and I was like, someone had hit me at school, and I was such an emotional wee kid, right? So I ran. I was like, "Mummy, Daddy, I got hit at school." So my dad marched me to the school and said, "Which one was it?" Them over there, and he says, "Right, go and batter them, or I'll batter you."
Do you know what? It was a different world then. I have to say it because that's kind of how I was brought up as well. If somebody hit you, you might have hit them back. It was a different world. No, I couldn't either. Even when I hit them, I always got battered. But I'm running out of time, but I've got this next exercise.
Sorry, that's me going away doing a leafy lane. Sorry.
Because this is a good exercise to end with from the day. Because we're talking about that you can bring all these thoughts and memories back in your head from other people. So there's a little exercise you can do. Reflect on what, and again, this isn't something to share on here, it's something just to write down. Reflect on what was the most difficult in your life from birth to now. And then you write down what got you through these tough times. And then what was the happiest times in your life? And does anything prevent you from experiencing this level of happiness or peace of mind again? Because what we're looking at here is your belief on being happy and positive and having joy for your life. Do you believe, yes, you can be happy and have joy in your life, or do you believe you can't? And then you ask yourself, is that belief, whatever you've written down, is it holding you back? Because sometimes what we do is we tell ourselves in our mind is that I'll never be that happy again. So think about that. What are you actually telling yourself? And when you feel overwhelmed or obsessed with negative thoughts, right, what we were touching on there is sometimes, because it's linked to when we were children, we've all got little parts. We've got a young part inside us as well. Okay? So that younger, childish part comes to the front. I mean, I've seen myself, sometimes I go and see my mum and we end up arguing, right? My mum's nearly 90 and it's like I'm back being 5 years old again. My response is like a 5-year-old's response. That's my young part coming back. So have you ever been aware of responding or behaving in a way that actually a child would, right, respond? Because I know, as I'm saying, I know I have. Because does that focus on doing the following focuses on the needs of that child inside you? Because there's a child part of you which has needs, right? And that's why it's behaving in that way. So when the childish part, this is like a psychology, it's like positive psychology. What you would do is when you're feeling like that is watch a funny cartoon movie, watch a children's program, or a colouring book. Because what that does, we've all got what's called an inner child. It actually calms that inner childish child in you. Because we've all got needs that we need, perhaps that weren't fulfilled as a child. We're still carrying these unfulfilled needs inside us. We're getting right into psychology here, so I don't want to go too deep into that, but it's true. Or find an old photograph of yourself, or draw yourself as a child, and create a fun, fanciful story about that. Write a little story about, a fun story about what you would have liked to do when you were small, that sort of fills in the needs that you needed when you were wee. Because what it actually do is it starts to put life's answers in your mind, bearing in fact that your mind believes everything you tell it or you imagine. It's like ending a story. So if you were that sad little child in the playground and always wanted somebody to play with you, write a little story about having lots of friends and feeling good, and allow yourself to feel that good. You know, it might sound silly, but that actually really helps. It really does. You discover a little gateway into fun. You might have shut that door when you were younger, but you can open it back up by writing little stories and drawing little pictures about it. And it's actually a therapy called Draw Yourself Well that links into as well. It's nearly 20 past, so I think this is a good point to end today, Stephen, until Friday.
Yeah. So what she means by end today, she means...
Yes.
We're not... We've still got 15 minutes for you guys to ask any questions. So thank you so much, Susan, for those exercises, and I'm sure that everybody that's watching you can watch back this recording either on YouTube or on Facebook, and you can go back and you can scroll through. I've put down there as well Susan's YouTube channel, Facebook channel, YouTube channel, so you can go and have a wee look there, because Susan does have lots of self-help videos on her YouTube channel, which are absolutely brilliant. They're gold, so go and have a wee look there, just see what you think. So we have got Anne Martin, so it's more of a statement, but Anna's just saying there she doesn't just have one negative inner voice, she has a whole shitty committee.
Well, what you need to do, Anne, is just, I can't say it here, right, because I swear quite a bit, is the shitty committee is the hand. Just push, actually imagine yourself pushing them back. And I'm going to say nicely stop, right? But people who know me would know that I wouldn't say stop. I would say a swear word followed by off, and then give myself a positive message. And to be honest with you, that is exactly what I used to do. I know that I say on these videos stop, but it was never stop. It was always off. But you know what? It worked for me. So express yourself, whoever it is, express yourself in a way that's appropriate to you, that has strength and meaning for you. For me, I used to do that. It's like pushing it away. And I used to remind myself that, you know what? I can do anything and nothing's going to stop me. Because that goes into your mind, and believe it or not, it does start to encode in your mind. Anyone who knew me years ago will know that I would never, ever have sat in front of a video. You couldn't even get me in a room with people. I couldn't look anybody in the eyes. I was just terrible. And now I don't let anything stop me. Because you know what? I know that I'm not perfect. And if I make mistakes, so what? And I just come on here and I'm just who I am and just laugh and be silly and share my stories, and that's it. So don't let anything stop you.
I think it's easy to be like that as well, though. You know, like I think it's easier to wake up and feel negative than it is to wake up and feel positive. And you know, we spoke about that this morning. I woke up this morning at 5:55 a.m. with this sense of dread, this horrible feeling. And I'd said to Susan, I was like, I woke up this morning with this sense of dread, this horrible feeling. And I think it's the whole Blue Monday thing. I think it's in the ether, it's in the air. People are feeling shite now. Pardon my French. But Susan had said, she was like, and she just gave me that really good reminder. She was like, get up, put some good music on, dance around the house. So what I done is I got up, I jumped in the shower, I brushed my teeth, I brushed my hair, I put clothes on, some aftershave on, you know, and just prepared myself for my day. Came downstairs, stuck Imagine Dragons Natural on, you know, that Imagine Dragons song Natural, because it's a real like gut buster. Made myself a coffee, went outside and just breathed, and then like forced my hands into the air, and just it changes everything, though, doesn't it?
I think that's the key bit. It's as soon as you feel that way, it's doing something about it. Because we'll all feel that way, but you're changing it by doing something about it. It's like, I will not give space in my head now for any real period of time, any negativity or feeling bad, because once you, even the way I talk to myself, I wouldn't. I mean, I had a shitty committee basically as well, right? Just because of my whole past and how things were in my life. But if I allowed myself even to say I've got a shitty committee, that's me giving into it already, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't even do that. Do you know what? Now I look at it as I've got a band of cheerleaders in my head, cheering me on. I've got my own crowd following me, telling me, Susan, you can do it. And I know that it sounds like it's easy, but it took me a long time to change that mindset. I mean, it really did, but it took so much effort and so much how it influenced my life previously. I actually lived in what I would call a pity pot, feeling sorry for myself. Oh, poor me, why did this all happen? I would never allow that now, because I know how much changing the message you give to yourself changes your life. So the minute you start thinking about a shitty committee or people pulling you down, do you know what? Just didn't get into the practice to say, no, that's not right. I'm not having that because I deserve better. Because in fact, you do deserve better. You do. And you've got to remind yourself, even if it's every minute of every day, at first, remind yourself that that isn't the case and that voice is not true. So, basically.
It's so true. But I think, like, what I said there, you know, it's so easy to fall into that trap of I feel rubbish today.
Mhm.
You know, it's like there's that old saying that whatever you put behind the word I, you become.
Right. So what if you put I feel so rubbish today? So what am I going to do about it?
Yeah. Just changing it. So anybody watching this and saying, you know, if you woke up this morning and someone's asked you how you are and you've said, oh, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling rubbish, I'm feeling crap, turn it around and add those extra words on the end. You know, for Susan, I am feeling rubbish, or I was feeling rubbish this morning. I went and had a shower. I got dressed. I turned up for work. I put music on and danced around like a frolicking person.
Yeah. Do you know what? Because even just by saying, do you know what? I got out of bed feeling a bit rubbish. However, I've had a shower, I've got dance, I've put music on, and now I'm feeling great. You're giving yourself immediately a different message.
Yeah, and it lasts. It really does last throughout the day, doesn't it?
It does. Stop by the mirror and say, hello, I'm wonderful.
We've got a mirror in the hall, and I walk past and I say, how you doing? But I'm talking to my soul. You know, I'm not talking to the aesthetic, beautiful man that's standing in front of me. And I think that's it, though. I think it's like, love yourself, you know, because nobody else is going to. You know, you've got people around you, like your friends and your family, but where is it that we lose that part of us? Because, you know, you see children and they stand in front of the mirror and they're like, I've got really beautiful eyes. Or like, children never tell themselves that they're ugly or they're rubbish. Children are fascinated by their look, and they do. They love themselves, don't they?
I think we get wrapped up in life. It's taken listening too much to other people. Get wrapped up in life. And remember what I said when I first started this morning, that feeling good about life and feeling positive has actually got nothing to do with the outside world. It's an inside job. It all happens inside you. And that's what we lose that connection with what's going on inside us. We become too wrapped up in what's outside us in the world.
It really is quite sad, the way to think that, you know, we all start off life as these brilliant, imaginative, wonderful little inquisitive creatures, and then somewhere along the line we lose that and we stop believing in ourselves.
Because we listen too much to what other people say. And in today's world, it's all the social media and all the rest of it. And social media is actually really good. I like social media, but people they have fantasy lives on social media, and then other people come on and believe that's what a true life should be like, and then we think our life's not like that. So it's the reality thing that's not right on social media.
You know, it's interesting because I always remember being really young and always remember wanting to stand in front of people and speak to people and, you know, help people. And I remember when I was about 23, 24, I'd been married maybe about 3 or 4 years, and I was at a workshop and they'd asked for a volunteer, and I was like, I'll come up and speak. You know, I'm really happy. And the lady that was sitting next to me, I didn't know her from Adam, but she turned and she looked at me and she was like, that's a bit eager, is it? No, throwing yourself up there in front of people like that. You know, so it's like there's many people around you in society or in your family or in your friendship circles who they'll pull you down as well for. So why is that?
Well, I'll give you an example. Well, I was 11 years old, right? I used to love writing stories. My imagination used to go crazy, and I used to write stories all the time. Loved it. Really loved it. And I can remember in first year at school getting told to write a story. We all had to write a story about visiting our granny, right? So everybody was coming back and visiting their granny and watching telly. And this is me with my crazy imagination. I remember it. I wrote a story and there was I found gold in the bottom of our wardrobe, right? Because that was just my child's imagination about finding this pot of gold in our wardrobe. And the teacher took me away and said, Susan, you really have to stop using your imagination, right? You need to be able, if I asked you to write a story, just to write a normal story. You use your imagination too much. And this is true. And do you know, I stopped writing altogether. Stopped writing stories. And right up to this day, and this is 11 years old, if people say to me about being creative, I always say, oh no, I'm not creative. I've not got a creative bone in my body. Where I probably have, but there's a part of me still believes what that teacher says to me. It's almost like it's wrong to go into that creativity. Stay away from it, Susan, you've not to do that. Something in my head took that. So that's an important thing. That's me an example how much vulnerable we are. That someone's saying to you, well, that's a bit brass running up there, being first to get up there. That could have actually really made a part of you thinking, oh, I must never do that again. People are looking at me. How much we can influence how people feel about themselves and in fact carry throughout their whole life.
Yeah, it's amazing though, isn't it? So I think you really need to think about how you speak to people and how you respond to people, especially children.
Yeah.
You know, so
like sponges, eh?
Yeah. Like my children come up with the most crazy things, you know. So my logical mind will be like, what are you on about? However, I'll say, so talk to me about that.
Yeah.
What would you love to do with that? What would you like to, you know? So Noah the other day they had said something like, Dad, what I want to do is create this game when I'm older, and in this game I'm going to be like the main character of the game, and I'm going to have like, and he's talking about a computer game, you know. So his mind's going there to create all that amazing stuff, and instead of saying, oh, no, don't be silly, you know, because it would be so easy to say, don't be silly, you know, how are you going to create a game like that? Mm-hmm. I'd said to him, I was like, that sounds amazing. How cool does that game sound?
I would take into that for the point of what we're talking about here about positive mindsets, that people should treat themselves like that. Instead of saying to themselves, you're crazy, you can't do that. Start asking yourself these kind of questions. How are you going to do it? How would that make you feel? What's your thought process behind that? Because we don't actually question that. We just, when we get an idea, we just think, oh, it's stupid, I can't do it. Actually start to have these kind of questions and these kind of conversations with you. Get your pen and paper out. Look at the beliefs behind it. Look at the messages you're telling yourself and the feelings that are linked in it, and remember and challenge it. Because in fact, and I've touched on this yesterday as well, there is no limits to what you can do. The only limits we set up in our life are the limits that we set up with our beliefs inside our mind. So challenge them. And that's beliefs about everything.
I've got another quick question. I know we're running out of time here, but when I was in primary 3, we used to do, you know, story time in the morning on a Monday morning, and every week I had nothing to speak about, right? So I must have been like 7 or 8. I don't know how old I was, but I remember every week I had nothing to speak about, and in my mind I'd like created this fantastic story about going to visit my granddad in Australia over the weekend, or my granny and granddad in Australia over the weekend. And it got to story time, and I stood up in front of the whole class and I was like, so what did you do? And I was like, so I went to Australia for the weekend to see my granddad and my granny. And I was so confident with it, and I'd actually like I created this amazing story about like the plane journey and all the rest of it. And the teacher started to laugh when all the students were like, the teacher started to laugh, and she was like, Stephen, you know it would take you the weekend to get there, you know, you would still be on the plane, and everybody started laughing at me. And from that, I know, terrible. But see, from that point, it really, I think that's what stopped me from telling lies ever again. You know, it gave me this horrible slap in the face, this horrible. I don't know what I would call it, but it's probably one of the major things that happened in my life. If I look back on it, and I think that made me never want to tell a lie again in fear of being ridiculed by everybody. So I suppose it's a positive thing.
Well, if you look at that, it could. That lesson you learned was a positive, but potentially another child might have taken a negative learning out of that. But what that's doing is a good example of influence, how our childhood influences our thoughts and beliefs now, and how really they're not necessarily true. We need to go back and challenge them and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I would like people to take away the message for today: is challenge your beliefs, write them down and challenge them, and look for things that actually do light you up and give you that sense of meaning and happiness in your life. Start sort of moving things over a bit.
And surround yourself with positive people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll have moments of negativity, but as I said, it's being able to pull yourself out and not get stuck in it. That's the key.
One thing I do just before we finish, because we've got 2 minutes left, one thing I do is, if I see anybody on my social media sharing anything negative or anything that just kind of irks me, and I think, God, what a twat, I just unfollow them. You know, I don't unfriend them, but I unfollow them so I don't see their posts, I don't see any of the negative stuff that they're sharing. I think that's quite a good thing to do. Would you agree, Susan?
Unfollow. And I'm sort of known for this. Now, if unfollow doesn't work, I unfriend. And at times I've blocked as well. Block, actually, on social media is probably one of my best friends, because it took me a long time to find a happy Susan, positive Susan, and it's very precious to me now, and I really don't want anything in my life that disrupts that at all. I don't need it. What I have a really good, happy life. I'm not talking about material things. I'm talking about the happiness and joy and positive inside me, and I will never ever let anybody or anything upset that again. It took me a long time to get it. So I just block.
That's amazing. So just a few comments there. We've got Andy saying, really enjoyed this today. Thanks. And Diane saying, thanks, guys. So that is us, guys. All it leaves me to do is say a huge big thank you to the lovely Susan. I'm sorry for taking you down leafy lanes today, Susan. But we're definitely going to be doing this again on Friday, speaking about how we can develop that positive mindset. And speaking about positive mindsets, tomorrow's Soul Man Surgery guest is Kenny Walker from the group, who is the group fitness guy or the group X guy. Kenny's going to be speaking about exercise, he's going to be speaking about well-being, he's going to be speaking about all of that stuff. He's a very high energy guy. He's promised us tomorrow as well that he's going to do a little live workout. So get your shorts on, get your headbands on, your luminous tutus and your leg warmers and whatever else you want to wear for tomorrow. Because tomorrow's session should be really uplifting and really quite fun. And later on today as well, we've got another Soul Man Surgery as well. Hold your thinking for that though, because they messaged me this morning saying that they may have to cancel, but we've got a wee extra today as well. We're going to try and get as many extras in this week as we can, because it is that middle week in January where everybody traditionally feels a little bit more down, so we're just trying to give more to uplift people. So thank you so much, Susan. I will see everybody tomorrow for the Soul Man Surgery tomorrow, and Susan, I will see you on Friday.
Yes, you will. More exercises on Friday. We'll have quite a few more exercises to go through.
Amazing. Well, thank you everybody, and thank you, Susan. And Susan, I'll chat to you in just a second.
Right.
Bye.
strong.